All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Building Trust with Your Nonprofit Team. I do encourage you to ask questions and comment all along on the webinar system that I use. We actually have emojis, so I kind of miss the emojis, Marina, but just virtually send me your high fives and your smiley faces when you see something or hear something that resonates, because I do want to know what you're thinking and how things are going. So I'm guessing that most of you that are here today are here because you're leaders. And sometimes leadership comes with a lot of responsibility and a ton of hard work, but it's often laced with criticism, judgment, condemnation from your team, your stakeholders, and your community. And quite frankly, I mean, while we love what we do, that constant stream of disdain can impact anybody's confidence. And so you're probably here on this webinar because you want to be a good leader. You want to feel good about the work you do. You want to feel confident you can do it. And if you're like most leaders, you want to make a difference. And part of that challenge you're struggling with is perhaps, if you join today's webinar, the lack of trust. And so despite your best efforts, my guess is that to some degree you struggle as a leader. And most of us, we find that some days are harder than others. It's that constant focus on how do I get through my day, how do I lead my staff, and how do I serve my clients. And so first, I want to applaud you for being here today. You are one of the leaders that's focused on developing yourself, which is a key aspect of effective leadership and impactful teams. And we're going to take a look at what else is. But before I do that, Marina, just let me know for sure that you can hear me, and I'm going to try and minimize this screen so it's not distracting me. Nope, can't do that. Okay.
Yes.
We're good?
Yes, sound is coming through nice and clear, Kathy. Thank you.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So some of you may remember good old Gallup polls. So in the 1980s, Gallup transitioned its business to focusing on providing analytics and management consulting to organizations. So some of you may be familiar with their work if you've read any of these books, or if you've completed the Clifton Strengths Finder. And so they're kind of one of the real powerhouses in the research around leadership. And they found that the best leaders have three things in common. They have high engagement with their teams. Effective leaders, teams trust them. Doesn't always mean that they agree with them, but they trust them. And finally, effective leaders are those who bring purpose and meaning to the work the team is doing together. And so if you want to be an effective leader, these are kind of three things that you want to focus on. It's important to go back to the engagement piece because this is really key. And so Gallup defines engaged employees as those who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and their workplace. So they're engaged in the work they do, the people they work with, and the difference they're making. Here's the thing though, managers, you, me, all of us leaders, account for at least 70% of the variance in employees' engagement scores. So that means if the employees aren't engaged and a new manager comes in or the current manager changes his or her style, the engagement score could go up dramatically with the same group of employees, and they would trust their leader more. And so my guess is you aren't ready to move on and let another leader step into your position. So to increase your employees' engagement, level of trust, and thus your team's effectiveness, today we're going to focus on this question. How do you create an engaged team that trusts you while doing meaningful work together? Because those are the three parts of effective leadership and effective teams: engagement, trust, and meaning. So to start today's session off, what I want to know, and I'd love for you to make some comments in the chat box, and I'll get Marina to share them in a little bit here, but I want to know what you admire about good leaders. What is it that you see in them? What do you notice when someone's a good leader? What do you see? And I'm going to take a drink while you guys put some notes in the comment boxes. And like I say, we'll come back to those in a minute. But here's my guess. My guess is that it isn't their title or even their accomplishments, but the type of person they are and who they had to be to get there. My guess is what you admire about a leader is some of these traits listed on the screen here. You've probably thrown some of these ones in the comment box. We often admire a leader who persists despite the odds against them and their team, who demonstrates humility by asking the team for ideas, a leader who's willing to see things from different perspectives, a leader who leads with integrity, is brave, honest, passionate, fair, curious, or has a good sense of humor. To create an engaged team that trusts you and then works with you to do meaningful work requires that you lead with your strength of character. We admire and trust leaders with character. All of those words, integrity, courage, decisive, motivating, inspiring, are character traits. They are the ways leaders act, behave, and communicate that impact you. And when they get it right, you trust them. And when they don't, you slander them on social media, gossip about them at Smoker's Corner, or complain about them to your spouse, your friends, or anyone else who will listen. What have you got for comments, Marina? What are some of the words that people describe for how they see a good leader?
Yes, you're bang on, Kathy. So we're seeing good listeners, accountability, and integrity, leading by example, empathy and compassion, hardworking, equitable. So lots of those similar ideas coming together for sure.
Okay, perfect. So think about it. We talk about a person's character all the time, and often it's in kind of general statements like this, like, I admire her character, or we might say someone's got sound character. In a tongue-in-cheek kind of tone, we might chuckle and say, boy, he's quite the character. At other times, we might whisper to a friend, that was out of character for her. Or sometimes we groan as we watch someone damage their character. But often we don't use the word character to describe character. Instead, it's some of the words that you guys just listed a minute ago. We more specifically point to a trait, and subconsciously, as we tick off the traits, we're deciding if we trust them or not. They're so reliable, love their honesty, what grace she has, that's a man of integrity, appreciate their ability to be decisive. And the same is true with the absence of character traits we want in our leaders. At times, we cringe when they lack strong character, and our comments indicate how clearly we judge them. I can't trust them. She's so unreliable. He's so cold. They're dishonest. That was condescending and demeaning. And here's the interesting thing, too. Character traits are what we talk about when we refer to someone's reputation. So think of a leader you know, and I want you to pop some comments into the chat box again. But think of a leader you know, and what do they have a reputation for? So think of a leader that you know, and what do they have a reputation for? Is it drinking too much at the Christmas party? Do they have a reputation for being late for meetings? Being cheap? Perhaps they have a reputation for responding to needs quickly, or being there when their family or their team needs them. So I hope by now you're more curious about what character really is and why it's so important how to develop it in yourself so that you can create trust in your team. Any comments that you want to share about the reputation, Marina, while I have a quick drink?
Sure. So we've got kind of a mix of good and maybe not so good ones. So we see some that are wisdom, caring for their team, mentorship, having good boundaries. And then we have some other ones that are throwing their staff under the bus, being burnt out, being gossipy, being snarky or sarcastic. So, yes. Oh, here's a good one. This
totally get it.
Kathy, I like this one. They have a reputation for being supportive of career goals and growth. That's a nice one to end on. I like that.
That is a nice one. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So character is the sum total of the type of person you are. Character is not about what you are doing. It's about who you are being. Anyone can run a meeting, but how do you run a meeting? Executive directors, team leaders, and managers communicate with your team all the time. But how do you communicate? What type of person are you being when you address an employee's performance appraisal or share positive outcomes with a team? Who are you being when the crisis hits? So character isn't about what you're doing, it's about who you are being. Your character is developed as a result of these three things, and we're going to dive into these a bit deeper now: traits, values, and virtues. So again, as I'm going along, if anything resonates for you, put some comments in the chat box or ask questions. Marina's keeping her eye out for those. So just before I dive into these, let me just say that words are often used interchangeably, and so if my definition doesn't match somebody else's you've heard or your own, worry less about the words and more about the gist of what I'm going to talk about here. So there are two parts to traits. Traits are partly your genes. They are the nature part of the nature-nurture equation. And so these are things that you can't change about your life. Your gender, the color of your skin, whether you're tall, short, tiny, big boned, redhead, blonde, or brunette. If you have a strong jaw, large hips, freckles, birth defects, adult acne, the location, even the geographic location or the area you were born in really can't change. So you couldn't change the fact if you are a baby boomer, a millennial, or if you were born in Vancouver or Europe. And so it's all of those things that have an impact physically. But beyond the physical traits, and again, I want you to pop some things into the comment box here as you think of them. But beyond some of those physical traits are things that you can't change about your life or things that have shaped you. So think about some of the things like milestones, defining moments, childhood experiences. These are all things that have shaped you. For me, I was raised on a farm. That certainly had an impact. My sister died when I was 14 and she was 16. And I remember when I started child and youth care work and I was working in group homes with kids and they were transitioning out. I didn't get to say goodbye to my sister before she passed away. She died in a car accident. And I struggled with grief and loss issues when those kids transitioned out. And so that was something that had shaped me that I had to work with. My mom worked at our school as an aide. She had a close relationship with one of the teachers who was really into technology. And I'm pretty sure that that was part of the reason why I was one of the first kids to end up with a Commodore 64 in my house. And that jump start on technology has helped me tremendously. So what are some of the things that have shaped you? Was your dad or mom an alcoholic, a lawyer, a single parent, jobless? Did you experience a natural disaster, lose your home to a fire, a hurricane, or a flood? Were you raped? Did you have an abortion? Were you the victim of physical abuse or bullying? Did you travel the globe with your family? Did you move with your family frequently due to your parents' job changes? Have you lost a loved one due to suicide or cancer or car accident? One of these sessions that I did, one lady said to me, after losing both her parents, she and her siblings decided that they weren't going to let that shape their lives. You can't decide not to let something impact you, but you can decide how it will impact you. So I want you to just think about that. You've got the physical traits, the things you can't change about yourself, all of these other defining moments that are part of what's shaped you. Then there's the personality traits. And so many of us think of personality as something that's fixed and stable, but newer research suggests that it can be quite fluid. And so at the end of this session, you're going to get a link to a handout that's got a ton of other links. Like I can't even tell you how many links are in it. So most of the stuff that I'm talking about today, you'll get the link to at the end. So one of the things that you can do is go do the Big 5 personality test, and it will help you look at the 5 areas of personality and kind of get a sense of where you are on the different scales around extroversion and introversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness. So those are the traits, the physical traits and the personality traits. The next step is the values and virtues. And people often use these words interchangeably, but they're different. So let's unpack them for a minute. Values are the goals that you have or the way of life you aspire to. Keyword, aspire. We may value our family, but that doesn't mean we spend as much time with them as we want or treat them how we wish we would. You may value your health, but still eat the donuts, the chocolate bars, and drink too many lattes. In organizations, we have lists of values on the walls or in new employee orientation packages, but really don't do anything with those words. So identifying your values is an important and often missed step, but it doesn't end there. So in the comment box, I want you to just type some of your values. What's sacred to you? What do you value at work and in life? And I'm going to have a drink while you guys add some of those. Marina and we're talking before we started today. I'm in the area affected by the wildfires, and so the smoke has really impacted my throat and stuff over the last couple of weeks. So I'll need lots of drinks today. Any comments you want to share, Marina, before I keep moving on?
Sure. Yes, we have family, trustworthiness, respect, sincerity, honesty, growth, loyalty. Yeah, some really, really excellent values popping up there.
Yeah, okay. So now it's going to get a little bit trickier. So you then have to learn to bring those values to life, or what's called operationalize your values. When you honor your values with daily actions, you live virtuously or live with virtue. So your values are the things you aspire to. However, it's the daily actions or the habitual way of responding to life that leads to living with virtue. So then the question is, where does character fit in? Kind of in the middle. To become a person living with virtue and honoring your values, you need tools or pathways to get there. And your character traits are your pathways. So whereas the physical traits that we talked about a minute ago are primarily on the outside, your character traits are on the inside. It's not the who you are, it is the who you are, not the what you are, right? It's the inside. So you may have been born into a family who's Asian, but you may or may not be honest, caring, or a dedicated leader. So when we're talking about this, it's more than what people see on the outside. And so just as character is not often a term discussed in leadership training, nor is virtue. But character and virtue go hand in hand with effective leadership. Virtuous living and leading is the outcome of practicing your character traits consistently. So we move from valuing something to acting on that value. And to act on that requires you to use certain traits like curiosity, courage, or compassion. And the more we use those character traits and the more consistently we use them, the more they define our character. So think about character and virtue in the context of leadership. Honesty is a trait. We want our leaders to be honest instead of deceptive, and some of you have said that. But what if you are only honest some of the time? Does that make you an honest leader? Would people describe you as being honest? Would they say they could trust you? Or might they instead say that you choose when to be honest, and that, in fact, makes you untrustworthy? So the opposite then, however, like think about if you practice being honest consistently, not being cruel and hurtful, but authentic, genuine, forthright, and sincere. Would then others describe you as an honest person? Might they say that while maybe they don't like the answers they get from you, they can at least trust you to be accurate, truthful, and straight up? It's the habitual or the habit or the consistency of practicing honesty that influences others to see you as being an honest person. So I'm going to walk you through these in a new way just to kind of think about it. So on the left-hand side, you can see in pink it says value. So this is the valuing integrity. The number one trait that people are looking for from their leaders in about 99.9% of the research is integrity. And if you value integrity, you would say integrity is important to me. You would often notice others being in integrity, and you would feel in alignment or unaligned when you were in integrity or not integrity. That's the value spot. When we move it to a character trait, you actually practice being in integrity. And so you're practicing aligning your actions with what you believe in. So if I say I'll get back to you tomorrow, I will do my darndest to do that. And if I can't give you an answer, at least I will give you an update on where I'm at and tell you when I expect to be able to make that decision. So that's the character trait. Now, if you consistently do that, you would be seen as a person living with integrity because you've consistently practiced it. People expect your words are aligned to your actions. They know that you'll do what you say that you do. They trust you because you consistently act and behave with integrity. So that was integrity. Let's try respect. Again, on the left-hand side, this is a value. So respect, you say that I value it. I think it's important. Great. But do you act on it? We move it to the trait. When you take action on respect, it becomes part of your character. So it means you're practicing respecting others. And an example of that might be that you practice being respectful of gender and culture when you hire. Now, depending on how consistently you practice it, is how people will judge you. They see you as being a respectful person. And if you do it consistently enough, you will be known as being a genderly and culturally inclusive leader. So I'm hoping this is making sense. If not, Marina will jump in and give me a, whoa, stop, nobody's getting it. But I'm just going to keep going and assume that everybody's tracking along with me. So again, I think you've kind of got the answer to this question about why is character so important in leadership. Here's the thing. Leadership is not something you do, it's a way of being. Leadership is your unique expression of who you are. In essence, it's your character. And that's why no two leaders are alike. We like some, love others. Leadership is about motivating, inspiring, coaching, and mentoring people. And I did a whole webinar on this, I think last year. Marina's going to pop the link in for you guys after. But the effectiveness of all of that comes back to not what you do, but how you do it. It's the manner in which we motivate, inspire, coach, and mentor that both develop our character and our relationship with our employees. And it's all based on how we conduct ourselves. The manner in which we do those things, motivate, inspire, coach, and mentor, our actions, it's what we say and do, shapes our character. And the effectiveness of our relationships with employees and whether or not they trust us comes back to the manner in which we do what we do, how we interact, talk to them, and that's our character. Remember, the number one thing people are looking for from them, let me try that again. The number one thing people are looking for from their leaders is that they are in integrity. We want to know that we can trust our leaders. Trust them to do the right thing, trust them to take care of us, trust them to be upright, moral, conscientious, honest, caring, compassionate, fair, open, inspiring, and help us to be all of those things too. But here's the whole kicker in all of this. More than just being able to trust you sometimes, the question boils down to, can your people trust you not just in the good times, but in the busy times, the stressful times, and on the days you're not having a good day? Can they trust you in those times to still act with integrity, to respect them, and to be caring? Because quite frankly, it's those times that matter so much more than the good times. It's the consistency in good times and bad that makes the difference. So research has shown that our character, or perhaps more aptly put, our lack of character, is the biggest reason for leadership failure. Leaders without integrity fail to gain the trust of their team. Leaders who have no courage fail to rally those around them to do that risky work that's needed in organizations. Leaders without the ability to exercise self-control will fly off the handle, fall apart emotionally, or make snap judgments, leaving a trail of fear, confusion, and distrust behind them. Leaders who have little hope and optimism create a doom and gloom environment, which honestly is not much fun to work in. I know, I've been there. Any questions, Marina, any comments that I need to know before I jump into this horrible next slide?
No, it's all good.
All right. So this was me many, many years ago. For those of you who are not familiar with my work, I was in nonprofit organizations in the child protection field for about 25 years, fetal alcohol syndrome work, disability work, that kind of stuff. So I was hit with the reality of all of this several years ago when on my performance appraisal, my team indicated that I lacked integrity. And I didn't understand what it meant, so I just ignored it. Let me tell you, that wasn't a good idea. I thought I was being integrity though. I had strong values of family, which extended to wanting to create a family atmosphere on our team. I valued health and wellness and balance. It was important that both individually I did excellent work, but also that my team excelled. And I thought I was living that list of values. My team, on the other hand, according to my performance appraisal, didn't agree. And I was furious. So what did I do? I just worked harder to prove myself. Unfortunately, a year later, a second performance appraisal came through with the message even louder than the last time. Kathy lacks integrity. What's more, Our office culture had deteriorated to countless office fights, ongoing contempt, and a grievance had been filed against me. So I knew at that point in time it was time to take a good, hard, honest look at myself and figure out what was going on. So with the help of a coach, I began to see that while I valued certain things, I wasn't walking my talk. Family was important to me, but I was often at the office late, and I always took work home with me. The extent of my travel was impacting my family life, and I certainly wasn't creating a family environment on our team. I said health and wellness were important, but I was clearly overweight, stressed, and had several physical and mental health issues. I didn't give my team time to focus on their health and well-being either. And what I realized was that instead of pushing for excellence, I often pushed for perfectionism, which is the same scale, but one's way over to the wrong side. So I had a list of values that I was not practicing. So with that in hand, that information, and again, with the help of a coach, I started to loosen up, have more fun, bring that family balance back to work. I lowered my expectations from perfectionism to excellence, and together we turned the team around. And yes, that one lady is like about 8.75 months pregnant, and they were out doing a scavenger hunt. So we had a lot of good times once things turned around. The biggest lesson for me through all of that, though, that it wasn't about what I thought I was. It was about how I made my team feel. Here's the thing. Your character is how others describe you. It is their perception of you based on how your conduct impacts them. Your character is not how you see yourself and wish others would see you, but it's how your conduct makes them feel. So it didn't matter if I thought I was being in integrity if my team didn't think so. Character is their impression of you based on their perspective of you. Now, that also takes into account the context that the person sees you in, combined with their own set of values, virtues, and traits. And that's a whole nother conversation for another webinar. But for now, the question is, how do you influence someone to judge you and your character in the way that you want them to? And the answer is by managing your conduct. People define your character by your conduct. It's your interaction with them that impacts what they think of you. And here's where we come full circle to trust. Why is it so important that your team trusts you in the first place? What they think about you is not the end point. But going back to me, somehow my actions didn't make my team trust me. But more than that, that lack of trust that they felt impacted their behavior. Your actions, your conduct, in essence, your character, in any given moment will influence others. And the way you make them feel will either spur them on or turn them off. The way I was making my staff feel was creating havoc on our team. The other thing that I learned was that character is not a one-time action. Character is developed over time. Character or virtuous living is your habitual way of acting, behaving, and communicating in good times and bad. It's the result of a series of actions. So integrity was key for me, and it is for you too, for all leaders. But there's one other trait that's important, and I'm going to dive deeper into that in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit more about integrity before we go to the other character trait. Because this is like I say, this is the number one thing that people want from you. So what they want is to see that you are in integrity. That's how they're going to trust you. So integrity is doing what you say you're going to do. It's acting in accordance with what you believe. Integrity means that you adhere to moral and ethical standards. Integrity is the sense that a leader can be trusted to walk your talk. The people you supervise want to see that you practice what you preach, that you're true to your word. But remember, integrity is in the eye of the follower. You cannot make yourself be in integrity. Trust me, I tried. But if you work on being consistent with your conduct, people will likely judge you as being in integrity. So integrity is when your ethics and morals are aligned, and when they become almost integrated as one. Integrity comes from the same word as integer, which, if you remember back in math class, means a whole number. Your ethics are what you stand for. It's who you are. It's what you believe in. It's your principles, your values. It's what's important to you. Your morality is conforming to those principles. It's what you do and how you act. It's your behavior, your ways, your attitudes. So you might believe in honesty, but are you always honest? You might value accuracy, but do you ensure accuracy in your own work and in those around you? You might say your clients come first, but do they really? And this is what happens for many of us, especially when things get stressful and busy and crazy at work. Rather than alignment with our ethics, our morals and ethics become unaligned. And when you become out of integrity, that chasm grows between what you value and believe and what you actually say and do. When you're aligned and when you are in integrity with your values, people judge you as being in integrity and it feels good. But when you lack integrity, things start to get incongruent. There's an inconsistency between what you say and do. And you feel that inner turmoil build. That's why you're stressed. That's why you're living in survival mode. That's why your office environment is starting to fall apart, because we're not in integrity. The key is aligning your ethics and your morals. When you fall out of integrity, you might have a pattern of excuses. You might be inconsistent. And although you're on time for some meetings, a pattern starts to emerge that you show up late when things get busy. Your inconsistencies might show up in how you do things depending on who's around or who's watching. So you might show up at meetings on time when the big boss is there, but you're regularly late other times. Or you watch your words closely when certain people are around, but you lose your cool at other times. And maybe I'm not talking about you, maybe I'm talking about somebody you know, perhaps. So people who see leaders with strong integrity hear what their leader says they believe in and value, and sees their actions match what they say. And when this happens, people know they can lean on their leader, that they can count on them, and that they can trust them. And so therefore, our goal as leaders to work to gain the trust of our team is to work toward integrating what we believe and what we do. Integrity is about patterns and habits. And when you are in integrity, you have unchanging standards. People can trust you to do what you say you will do, even in the tough times. And the first step is to get clear, crystal clear, on your beliefs, principles, values, ethics, standards. You need to know where the line is. You need to know what hill you'll die on. And you need to know what you won't ever waver on and what's not worth fighting for. If you don't know what's important to you and why it's important, it's hard to live in alignment with that. And when I say you need to get clear on this, I mean crystal clear. Saying you value family or honesty is not enough. You need to define that. Many of us value family, but what it means for me is very different than what it means for you. Maybe you're okay with traveling for a week at a time and only being home for supper at least once a week. I, on the other hand, may believe that I need to be at home for supper every night and put my kids to bed. So we need to get clear on that. I'm going to have another drink, Marina. Any comments before I move on to the next trait we need to work on?
No, Kathy. I just want to remind everybody, though, if you have questions for Kathy, do pop them in the question box, and we will have a Q&A at the end, too. So we will have time to get to some of your questions. Thank you.
All right. Okay, perfect. Okay. So we talked about integrity. The second trait that leaders need to work on to strengthen their character and live a virtuous life is courage. Now, we don't name courage as something we use every day, but we do. Courage comes into play so often as a leader. You need to be brave to lead that team meeting. You have to have the courage to take on that new program, engage in a difficult conversation, ask for higher wages, apply on the grant. And that's why this quote from Aristotle is so true. Courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees all others. And without courage, it's really, really hard to live in integrity. But there are two types of courage, physical and moral. And unlike the courage to mountain climb, bungee jump, or hang from the edge of a cliff, courage in leadership is less about daring acts and more about having to speak up, voice your opinion, or share a hard truth. Being a brave and courageous leader more often falls under that column of moral courage. So when I took adult swimming lessons, because I didn't know how to swim as a child, It took physical courage to stand on the edge of that pool and jump into the deep end. But let me tell you, that did not compare to the courage I had to face when I had to address an employee's performance or deal with that grievance that was filed against me. So when our values, beliefs, ethics are put to the test, they're often colliding with one another, and we have to take the moral courage to act. Moral courage is doing the right thing in the face of doubt, fear, and backlash. It's the ability to act rightly. And here's a couple points that are really key here. In the face of discouragement and opposition, knowing full well that what we are about to do may run adverse, serious personal consequences. And so if you think about the opposite of moral courage, it's being morally mute. And you're morally mute when you lack the courage to address moral issues. For us in the nonprofits and charities in Canada, a recent example of moral courage was when Elizabeth LeClaire and now many others have spoke out about the sexual abuse happening to the women in nonprofits. But those women were morally mute when they stayed quiet for so long. Liz said it took her a long time to come forward before she decided to, and she had to weigh the consequences about what speaking out would do for her career, her family, and her reputation. Moral muteness is when we stay quiet, even though it's against our morals and ethics. It's when we allow wrongdoings to go unchallenged or unreported, like when the boss misuses funds, or we're paid unfair wages, or a client is abused, or someone breaks a policy around universal health precautions. We have to stand up to those things. When a leader has moral courage, they're seen as being a leader who leads with integrity. That's because their actions and words are aligned with what they believe in, and what they communicate is important to the team. Integrity requires that you make tough decisions and tackle difficult tasks. And what this really boils down to is all of what's going on inside of us, and then managing what's happening, all of those thoughts, those feelings, with your actions. Moral courage and living in integrity, in fact, living a virtuous life, is all about emotional intelligence. And that's what this quote reminds us of. It's the inner voice that coaxes, prods, and inspires us to meet our responsibilities and live up to our principles when doing so may cost us dearly. And again, that's the part. This isn't easy work. I'm not going to tell you it is. But if you want to gain the trust of your team, you're going to have to say some of those hard things, make some tough decisions. But in the end, you'll gain the trust of your team, and it'll make you feel better about how you lead and live. To live with integrity and to be morally courageous, we need to have a strong inner compass. In my book, I teach readers to activate that moral compass via what I call the inner guidance cycle. And so I'll go through this in half a second, but the last step of the inner guidance cycle is about proceeding. It's about having the moral courage to take action, speak up, or sometimes even stay quiet if that's the case. But before we can have those hard conversations, we need to connect to that inner compass. And the first step is to pause. We're just like go, go, go all the time. We rarely stop and pause and take time to think. But we need to step back, take a break, give ourselves time to tune in. And when we do that, that brings me to the second step of the inner guidance cycle, which is to ponder. Ponder is reflecting on that decision you have to make or that predicament you're in. It's not regurgitating the same thought over and over again mindlessly. It's mindfully and not non-judgmentally getting curious. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's going on in our workplace? What's happening in this conversation? And really starting to dig a little bit deeper. And what happens when we do that pondering is we often realize things. We start to see things from a different perspective. And that's when we make that pivot. So maybe you do realize you have to have that hard conversation with somebody or communicate that tough decision. That brings you back to that proceed part. But actually going to have that conversation is way harder than just thinking about it. That proceed part is about having the moral courage to take action, speak up, say something, or maybe stay quiet, realizing this isn't the hill I want to die on, and you walk away. Effective leadership is an ever flow back and forth between what's going on inside of you, looking at your values, your ethics, your morals, understanding what emotions you're feeling. All of that inner work But at some point, to lead strongly, you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. You've got to ebb and flow that inner work with the outer work involved in leading, networking, negotiating, supervising. It's the relationship part. And that takes an incredible amount of that courage part. And that's that piece. That moral courage is that proceed part. And so thinking about it is one thing, but actually doing it, we have to move forward despite the fear, the potential repercussions, the backlash. And when you consistently do this, you'll be aligning your beliefs, your ethics, your values, your conduct. All will be aligned. You'll be in integrity, and your team will trust you. So I said in today's webinar, you're going to learn a 3-step strategy for developing your character so your team will trust you. And that's what we're going to get to now. At the end, you're going to get this link, and you're going to get this crazy download that has all of these links in it. So all of the stuff that I'm going to talk about are going to be, you can access it via the link that you're going to get at the end of the session today. So I'm going to start with a story from Kevin Cashman's book, Leadership from the Inside Out. So in his book, he talks about a priest who was walking down a road, and he was confronted by a soldier. And the soldier aims his rifle at the priest and asks, "Where are you going? Who are you? Where are you going? And why are you going there?" And the priest kind of looks at him and says, "How much do they pay you to do that?" And surprised, the soldier says, 25 kopecks a month. And the priest pauses and in a deeply thoughtful manner says, "I have a proposal for you. I will pay you 50 kopecks each month if you stop me here every day and challenge me to respond to those same 3 questions. Who are you? Where are you going? And why are you going there?" Strong and effective leaders know the answers to those same 3 questions. Who are you? Where are you going? And why are you going there? And when you get clarity on those, who you are, your values, your ethics, your beliefs, where you're going, how you're going to live those on a daily basis, and know why that is also important to you, you're going to be leading with integrity, and your team will trust you. So think about it for a moment. Who are you? What makes you any different from anybody else on this webinar? And remember what we talked about earlier. This goes back to your traits, your physical traits, your personality traits. It also goes back to your values, your ethics, and think about those defining moments. And then think about, where are you going? What is it that you want to grow or develop in yourself? What character traits do you need to work on to become the type of leader you desire? And why? Why is it so important to get there? What's the point or purpose of becoming that type of leader? I mean, really, why bother? You got into this job for some reason, and it probably wasn't the big paycheck. So why are you trying to do all of this? And again, that comes back to your underlying ethics, beliefs, and values. So we're going to talk about the 3-step strategy for developing your character. And these are the 3 steps. And again, I'll remind you, you will have access to this handout at the end. The 3 steps are: know thyself, choose thyself, and create thyself. So the first one, who are you? Again, go back to your genetics, your personality traits. What are your skills, your talents, your gifts? What do you value? What are you passionate about? You're going to get a link to the VIA Strengths test, and I really encourage you to go over and do that. It'll help you look at, there's 24 different character traits that they look at, and it will help you identify your top 3. And then you use those character strengths more frequently to become a better leader. The Gallup Strength Finder, some of these are going to be familiar to you. Myers-Briggs, DISCs, the Big 5 personality. What other things have you got? Maybe your performance appraisals too, comments that you've heard from other people, but you've got to look at, who am I? Some of the other things, I do a 360 tool called the Leadership Circle Assessment, which gets access to all of that information from your peers and other people. And then I have a course called Values Verification, and I said earlier, it's not enough to just say family is important to me, or honesty is important to me, or integrity is important to me. You have to identify clearly what that means to you. So that's the first step. The second step is then to choose thyself. Who are you becoming? Personal development is so critical to leadership. You need to create that vision of who you're going to grow into. What type of leader do you want to be? What's the impact you want to have? What's the legacy you want to leave long term and today? I think people often forget that your legacy isn't just about when you're gone. It's about when you walk out of the meeting. What are people saying about you now when you leave the room? How do you want to impact them? So in the handouts that I'm giving you some journal prompts to help you really think about your legacy, but I also give you some resources for creating that vision, that target. What's the type of leader you're becoming? The next step then is to create thyself. How are you going to get there? And we don't focus on this a lot. We sort of move through our days, and every day is kind of the same. Some more fires, some more crisis to put out. If you're going to create yourself, you need to do it intentionally. You need to create a habit of making time for reflection. Courage isn't for the faint of heart. If you're going to do some of those morally courageous things, you need to do that inner work and connect to that inner compass. And so you have to really create some new ways of thinking, time for that inner reflection, the habit of getting out of your comfort zone, being willing to fail, all of those kinds of things. It's the time to build your roadmap. You have to really look at what's my strategy, my blueprint. A dream is just a dream without a plan. And it's the same if you're looking at creating yourself. So when I said earlier about the VIA Strength Finder, go do that. It'll give you your top 3 character strengths. Actually, I think it probably gives you your top 7. Unless you want to pay for it. That's for the free version, it gives you your top 7 anyhow. But after you've done that, they've got a ton of resources on that website about developing your character. And then I've also provided you with a link in the handout for a course that I do to help you develop your personal professional strategic plan, because I think it's so important for leaders. We often go with the performance appraisal that we've got at work, or we look at work-related goals, but there's a combination of personal goals and career goals and the current job you're in goals, and sometimes we need to look at all of those together. So back to the beginning. Effective leaders do the work. They know themselves, they choose themselves, and they are constantly recreating themselves as they grow and develop. And when they do, they create high levels of engagement with their team. Their team trusts them and respects them. And together they bring purpose and meaning to the work they're doing together. We admire and trust leaders with character, integrity, courage, decisive, motivating, inspiring. Those are all character traits. They are the ways leaders act, behave, and communicate that impact their team. And when you get it right, your team trusts you. And those are the 3 steps for doing that. Know thyself, choose thyself, and create thyself. And all of that is outlined in the handout at the end. And again, all of the tools, I've got the links in for you. So hopefully they work. If they don't, message me and let me know that you need something shared with you. Bottom line is we admire and trust leaders with character. And if you want to develop your character and you want your team to trust you, you have to do that inner process on an ongoing basis. It's not a one-time thing, where you really look at, who am I, where am I going, and why am I going there? Know yourself, choose yourself, and trust yourself, and create yourself. And that's how you become one of the leaders in the nonprofits where your team really admires you and trusts you. Back over to you, Marina.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. You gave us a lot to think about here today. And I want to jump right into questions because we've had quite a few come in.
Okay.
So first of all, what can a leader do to rebuild trust, first of all, when they are new to a team that perhaps, some previous leadership has lacked some trust with their team and maybe they're a little skeptical about the new leader coming in?
I think it starts with being morally courage to have some of those vulnerable conversations with people and, being open and honest. I want to gain your trust. Where are you struggling with trust? What happened, that perhaps they don't lack trust? Get a sense of that. But again, it comes back to the consistent actions. Communicate your values, communicate what's important to you, and then act on those. People will trust you. If you say, you come in as a new leader and you're like, it's really important that we have team meetings once a month. I want to make sure that we're all good on having great communication, ongoing conversations. We're going to have team meetings once a month, and on top of that, I'm going to meet with each of you individually. If you say that, do it. If you fall off the wagon in the first 3 months, people are going to be like, yeah, she's all talk. you have to really stick to it. And building trust takes time. So each action builds on each other. And really, you know, the more consistently you do that, the more trust you will build. So be clear on who you are, what's important to you, why it's important to you, and make sure that your actions align with that over time.
That's great. And now what if you are an existing leader and, you know, you, Kathy, so courageously shared your story. You know, what about folks that might be in that same situation that need to rebuild their trust with their existing team?
Yes, get some supports because it's not an easy journey. Talk with, you know, your organization and stuff as well. I had the support of my boss, who in his wisdom knew he wasn't the one to support me. He'd actually caused some of the troubles. So he was the one that suggested I get a coach. My HR person was a wonderful support. I had some other people there that were sort of peers in the organization. So I knew that I had people that I could trust to lean on. And then it came down to sort of looking at where had I broken trust and where did I need to sort of start and mend some of that. So I went back and had some of those hard conversations with some people, but I also looked at which of those conversations were, and I don't know how to say this in a way that might not offend some people, but which of those conversations were worthwhile and which weren't. Some of those people weren't right for the job anymore. And in the end, we let a couple people go. And so we kind of, it was a bigger approach where it wasn't just me. It was like, what's going on in our team? And part of the reason some of the team lacked trust in me is I hadn't let that person go, and that person was causing havoc on the team. One of the other things that happened was that we had expanded into new territory, and so I was overwhelmed. And we had to kind of rejig what was happening in our organization so everybody could have more of a balanced workload. So it was some of those hard conversations and looking at bigger picture stuff, but making sure that you've got supports in place. And do the inner work. I cannot express this enough. I go back to that time in my life and I have journals and I have notes and I have goals and I have courses that I was taking online, and I was doing the inner work. I did not just kind of decide one day, oh, I'm going to become a great leader and everybody's going to trust me. It was a process of both. When you've seen the infinity loop. Oh, and I have to say, okay, this is a total side note. Sorry, I'm geeking out for half a second. There's an update to iPhones today and there's new emojis, and one of the new emojis is the infinity loop. I'm so excited because I use it all the time in my work. There is that ebb and flow between the inner work and the relationships constantly. And too often we get caught in one or the other where this, and this is what I did, I would separate myself at times and I would isolate myself and just ignore the team and pretend I was really busy and I didn't have time to deal with anything. That's not helpful. Or you never do the inner work and you're constantly at meetings and on the go and doing all this stuff, but you never pause to look at how did that conversation impact that person? Who was I in that meeting? And did I have the impact I want? You have to have both the ebb and flow on both sides. Hope that answered the question, Marina.
Yes, that's excellent. Thanks, Kathy. Now, this is a question that's come up from a few different folks, so I want to make sure we address this. How does all of this come into play when you have been newly promoted to a leadership position, and as someone mentioned, you know, you've risen through the ranks? How does this change?
It changes because I think you have to go back and reevaluate your values, your beliefs, your ethics, your, you know, that core of what's important to you. If you want people to trust you and be in integrity, you have to have those things clear. So again, for me, here's an interesting thing. I thought family was the top value for me. I always thought family was my number one thing. And when I did this inner work, I realized that family actually wasn't my top value. Excellence is my top value. And excellence for me means that I am an excellent mom, I'm an excellent wife, but I also take excellent care of my health and my well-being. I have excellent outcomes. And so I had to look at going, oh, how do I balance all of that? And again, I said this earlier, what I realized was I was often looking for perfectionism, not excellence. And so I had to each time, and I did this, I rose through the ranks. And so each time I advanced into a position, I had to really step back and look at what are the expectations of me, what's required of me, what are the outputs and the outcomes that we're looking for as a team, and where is my line for excellence versus perfection. And I had to come back to that again and again and again. And so part of that now I know in my work, Marina will attest to this, if I have something that's due and somebody's like, yeah, just get it to me whenever, I'll be like, no, 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 give me a deadline. I need a deadline, because for me that helps me be excellent. If I don't have that deadline, yeah, I'll keep putting it off and I'll keep putting it off and I'll keep putting it off. And so I know, here's another example for me now, and some of you will see this probably in the slides. My grammar and spelling suck. That's just not my strong point. And that used to kill me when I was in organizations, because it knocked down my confidence. If somebody noticed that I had done something wrong, I'd be like feeling just like I wanted to crawl under the table. But that's that perfectionism piece coming out. My work is good, the content of what I deliver is good, and to learn and know that I'm giving excellent information, but it's not perfect, is important. And so each level you rise, go back and do that inner work, reevaluate what's important to you and how that shows up in this position.
That's wonderful. And I want to just finish with a comment that we received from someone, and then also a question that relates to it. So we had someone share their story, which I think is really representative of probably what some folks out there are thinking about right now, saying that they did attempt to take the morally courageous route. They stood for their principles. They, were in alignment. Unfortunately, the leader of the organization was not in alignment with them, and their contract was finished. Now, this person also stated, which I think is a wonderful attitude, that they felt that it had been a hard situation and a difficult journey, but they were very proud of themselves for this stand that they took. And I think that highlights kind of the difficulties, and some folks will not be in a position to be able to just leave an organization. Some folks might be, but we've had sort of the tandem question come with that of how do you handle it when the organization values might not be in alignment with your personal values?
Oh, yes. Probably every lady I coach these days, and myself for sure. I won't tell you it's easy, but I will tell you the sooner you start to voice yourself and get clear, the sooner shifts can happen, or you will realize sooner that, yeah, this isn't the organization for me. And I think part of it is finding alignment with other people that have the same values as you as well. Having some of those conversations about, what's going on here. And so, when I was talking earlier about having people on my side, I had aligned myself with people in my organization that had similar values to me. At the end of the day, when I left my organization, it was because the way the contracts were changing wouldn't align with my values. I knew that things were happening where I was like, that doesn't work for me. And I couldn't do that any longer. It's an extremely hard decision to make. And so sometimes you take the time to do, again, it takes time and it requires reflection. That's the bottom line. Time, reflection, do the inner work. You have to really look at, again, as I said earlier, one of the things you have to decide is, what's the hill I'm going to die on? Where's the line? And I'm okay with going to the line, but man, oh man, if this organization or this boss or this leader or this client crosses that line, that's it. When Liz came out about the sexual abuse in nonprofits, what she believed at the time, she said, was, if I say something, it's going to impact our organization. And so at some point, she had to go back to the organization, to her boss, to whoever, and say, and I don't know this part of the story, but I'm making it up. I'm going to say this, and how's it going to impact the organization? And so she had to decide if it was worth the risk or not. I wish there was an easy answer, what I can tell you, like I say, is do the inner work and find supports.
Thank you, Kathy. I think we're going to end it there because we are a little bit over time. Did you have any final thoughts, Kathy, that you want to share before we wrap up?
Just reach out to me individually if you have questions, you want me to elaborate on anything, grab the download, and if any of those don't work, the links, let me know. I think I checked all of them, but yeah, do the work. That's the final answer.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kathy. So we did hear from a couple of folks that maybe one link wasn't working. So we're going to follow up on that before we send out all of the stuff to you. So if you found that, we are going to check on it for you, and everything should be working when we send it out to you later today or tomorrow morning. Thank you again, Kathy. We so appreciate you coming back. You always give so generously of your time back to our nonprofit audience. So we want to thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Yes, and as I mentioned, we will follow up by email later today or tomorrow morning with the webinar recording, the slide deck, and the handout that Kathy mentioned, as well as a couple of other links for you. There's going to be a short survey there. It takes less than 5 minutes to fill out, and we really hope that you'll fill that out for us if you have the time. You'll have an opportunity there to let us know if there's other topics you'd like to see covered in a future session. And we'll be sure also to share all of that feedback with Kathy. So if you have any comments that you'd like her to see, that's the place to put them. We'll be continuing our leadership series next week on June 13th. We have another veteran Charity Village webinar presenter, Leanne Pico, who will be hosting a slightly different session. We're going to do our best to answer your questions about leadership in the sector with an Ask Me Anything format. So there will be a link to register in the email that you receive later on with the recording. And you can register there. There's a pre-webinar survey you can fill out, and you can also come prepared with your questions. So thank you again for joining us today. I hope to see you again next week, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.